The envelope arrived on a Thursday, forwarded 3 times before finding me in Austin. Inside was a single photograph, my mother standing beside a hospital bed, her face gaunt and aged beyond her 62 years, her hand reaching toward empty air where I should have been standing. On the back, in my father's careful architect's handwriting, "She's asking for you. Stage 4. Please come home." I held that photograph for 19 minutes by my kitchen clock, studying the woman who had taught me that love was something you performed for an audience, not something you felt in private. The oxygen tube snaking across her face looked like the 4 lines I'd had after the accident she'd never visited me for because my sister Bryn was launching her boutique that same week and someone needed to be there for the important moments. Stage 4. Terminal. Weeks, maybe days. I placed the photograph face down on my counter and made myself a cup of coffee. Then I sat at my breakfast table in the morning light streaming through windows I'd chosen myself, in an apartment I'd furnished without anyone's opinion, and I thought about mercy. About whether the woman in that hospital bed had earned it. About whether I had the capacity to give it even if she hadn't. Then I picked up my phone and made a call. Not to my parents. Not to the hospital. To my attorney Rebecca Chin, who had helped me navigate the legal aftermath of my emancipation 3 years ago, when I was 25 and finally ready to sever every tie that bound me to the Laurent family. "I need you to do something for me," I said. "And I need it to be airtight. My name is Margot Laurent. I'm 28 years old. And this is the story of how I learned that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for people who never saw you is to let them keep not seeing you, even at the very end. Especially at the very end." 3 years earlier, I'd been sitting in my childhood home in Scottsdale, Arizona, watching my sister Bryn open birthday gifts worth more than my annual salary as a junior architect. She was turning 26, 2 years younger than me, and our parents had rented out the ballroom at the Phoenician Resort for 200 guests who'd come to celebrate their favorite daughter. My gift to her sat unopened in the pile, a vintage Hermes scarf I'd found after 3 months of searching estate sales and consignment shops, the exact pattern she'd mentioned wanting during one of our increasingly rare phone calls. It had cost me $800 I couldn't afford, money I'd scraped together by taking on extra drafting work and skipping meals. My parents' gift was presented last, with ceremony. Dad stood up, tapping his champagne glass for attention. The room fell silent. "Bryn," he said, his voice warm with pride, "your mother and I wanted to do something special for you this year. You've worked so hard building your interior design business." She'd worked hard by using their connections and their money to rent a showroom in Old Town Scottsdale, filling it with inventory they'd purchased, and hiring a staff they paid for while she collected the credit. "And we wanted to show you how proud we are." He handed her a key with a silver Audi keyring. "It's outside," Mom said, beaming. "White A7, the one you showed us from the magazine." Bryn screamed. Actually screamed, the way people do in car commercials. The entire ballroom erupted in applause as she ran outside, heels clicking on marble, designer dress billowing behind her. I followed at a distance, watching as she discovered the white Audi with its enormous red bow, wrapped perfectly around the hood. The car cost $86,000. I knew because I'd overheard Dad on the phone with the dealer the week before, negotiating the financing. When we returned inside, Bryn was crying happy tears, hugging our parents, while guests circled to admire the photos on her phone. I stood near the dessert table, making myself small, waiting for someone to remember I existed. No one did. Later, after most guests had left, I approached my parents near the coat check. They were tired but glowing, the way they always glowed after a successful Bryn event. "That was generous," I said carefully. "The car." "She deserved it," Mom replied, not really looking at me. "She's been working so hard." "I got promoted last month," I offered. "To senior designer. They're letting me lead the Tempe Public Library renovation." Dad glanced up from his phone. "That's nice, Margot. Good for you." "Nice. Good for you." The same phrases they'd used when I graduated summa cum laude from architecture school. When I won the state design competition. When my thesis project was featured in Architectural Digest. I was hoping. I stopped, hating myself for the hopefulness in my voice. "Maybe we could have dinner? Just the family?" I wanted to tell you about the project. We'll see, Mom said, her attention already drifting toward Bryn, who was showing the car to her friends in the parking lot. Things are so busy right now. Bryn's opening her second showroom next month, and we're helping with the launch party. They never called to schedule that dinner. That night, lying in my small one-bedroom apartment with its second-hand furniture and structural cracks I couldn't afford to fix, I did something I'd never done before. I opened my laptop and started documenting. Not with emotion or accusation, but with facts. The spreadsheet grew over weeks. Birthdays, holidays, achievements, crises. Every disparity meticulously recorded. Bryn's college, $240,000, paid in full. Margot's college, $0, told to find scholarships or take loans. Bryn's first apartment, $2,800 per month, parents co-signed and paid deposits. Margot's first apartment, $650 per month, paid own deposit by selling textbooks and plasma. Bryn's business startup, $150,000 initial investment. Margot's architectural certification, $12,000 in exam fees and continuing education, paid through payment plans. Bryn's 22nd birthday, Paris trip with parents, 2 weeks. Margot's 22nd birthday, dinner at Olive Garden, parents left early for Bryn's gallery showing. The list went on. And on. 28 years of systematic preference, documented with receipts and bank statements and photographs where Bryn was centered and I was cropped out or blurred in the background. But the spreadsheet alone wasn't what broke me. It was the accident. I was 25 when the drunk driver hit my car on the I-10. The impact sent my Toyota spinning across 3 lanes of traffic before slamming into the concrete barrier. I woke up in Scottsdale Medical Center with a fractured pelvis, 3 broken ribs, a collapsed lung, and a traumatic brain injury that left me unable to remember my own name for the first 48 hours. The hospital called my emergency contacts, my parents. They didn't come. I know this because I asked the nurses, over and over, through the fog of pain medication. When are my parents coming? Did they say when they're coming? The nurses exchanged looks that I was too injured to interpret at the time. On day 3, Dad finally appeared. Not because he'd rushed to my bedside, but because he was in the area for a meeting. He stood awkwardly at the foot of my bed for 17 minutes, I counted, and told me that Mom couldn't come because Bryn was having a crisis with her business and needed emotional support. What kind of crisis? I'd asked, my words slurred from the concussion. The contractor she hired for the second showroom is behind schedule. She's devastated. You know how sensitive she is. I'd been unconscious for 36 hours. I'd nearly died. And my sister's contractor being late was the crisis that required both parents' attention. I'm glad you're okay, Dad said, checking his watch. I need to get going. The meeting starts in an hour. Wait, I tried to sit up, gasping as my ribs protested. Can you stay? Just for a little while. Margot, I'm here now. What more do you want? What I wanted was what Bryn would have gotten, both parents immediately, staying until discharge, arranging for in-home care, covering medical bills without being asked. What I got was 17 minutes and a reminder to update us when you're released. I was discharged 6 days later. A friend from work drove me home because my pelvis wasn't healed enough to drive myself. My parents never called to check if I needed anything. But they attended Bryn's showroom grand opening 2 weeks after my accident. I saw the photos on Facebook, Mom and Dad beaming, cutting the ribbon, celebrating their daughter's achievement. That was the moment I started planning my exit. The attorney's office was in downtown Phoenix, modern and expensive looking in ways that made me nervous about the retainer. But Rebecca Chin came highly recommended for family law cases involving estrangement. I want to understand something first, she said, after I'd explained my situation. Are you seeking legal emancipation from your parents, or financial protection? Both, I said. I want to make sure that if anything happens to me, if I'm ever hospitalized again, if I'm incapacitated, they have no legal authority to make decisions on my behalf. You're 25. You're already legally independent. I want it in writing. I want documentation that they have no claim to me, no rights, no access. And I want to make sure that if I ever have assets worth protecting, they can't touch them. Rebecca studied me carefully. This is about more than the accident. This is about 25 years of being invisible. Over the next 6 months, Rebecca helped me construct a legal framework of separation. Healthcare directive explicitly excluding my parents and sister from any medical decision-making authority. Power of attorney documents designating my friend Marcus, who'd driven me home from the hospital, as my representative. A will leaving everything to charity, with specific language excluding my family. A restraining order template, ready to file if they ever showed up uninvited. A comprehensive documentation file of the pattern of neglect, should I ever need to prove emotional abandonment. This is bulletproof, Rebecca said, reviewing the final documents. But Margot, I need to ask, are you sure? Once you serve them with this, there's no going back. I thought about the hospital room. About 17 minutes. About a lifetime of being the daughter they forgot to love. I'm sure. I didn't serve them the documents immediately. Instead, I tested a theory. I stopped calling. Stopped texting. Stopped showing up to family events. For the first 3 months, nothing changed. No one reached out. No one asked where I was. My absence was as invisible as my presence had always been. Then Bryn got engaged. The text from Mom came at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. Bryn's engaged. Family dinner this Saturday to celebrate. 6 p.m. at Mastro's. See you there. Not a question. An expectation. I didn't respond. Saturday came and went. Sunday morning, my phone rang. Mom. Margot, why weren't you at dinner? I didn't confirm I was coming. Well, of course you were coming. It's a family celebration. I haven't heard from you in 4 months. Silence. Then, don't be dramatic. We've all been busy. You visited me for 17 minutes when I was in the hospital. Now you're keeping track of minutes? Margot, that's not healthy. The gaslighting was so smooth, so practiced, that I almost apologized. Almost fell back into the pattern of making myself smaller to accommodate their narrative. Instead, I said, I won't be attending family events anymore. Please don't expect me. What are you talking about? You're being ridiculous. I'm being clear. I'm done. I hung up. The calls came sporadically after that. Dad, concerned that I was having some kind of breakdown. Bryn, annoyed that I was creating drama before her wedding. Mom crying about how she'd tried so hard and didn't understand what she'd done wrong. None of them asked about my life, my recovery, my feelings. It was all about how my absence affected them, inconvenienced them, reflected poorly on them. After the 10th call, I blocked their numbers. After the 15th email, I created filters that sent their messages directly to a folder I never opened. After Bryn showed up at my workplace, demanding I stop being selfish and be there for the family, I filed the restraining order. The day the court approved it was the day I started breathing fully for the first time in 25 years. I transferred jobs to Austin 6 months later. A boutique architectural firm specializing in sustainable public spaces had been trying to recruit me for years. The timing was finally right. I didn't tell my family I was moving. I simply vanished from their peripheral vision, though I'd never really been in their direct sight anyway. In Austin, I rebuilt myself methodically. Made friends who actually asked about my day. Dated people who remembered my birthday without Facebook reminders. Adopted a cat who required daily attention and gave me a reason to come home. I excelled at work, leading projects that won awards and brought in major clients. My name appeared in industry publications. I spoke at conferences. I became someone. Just not someone my family knew. The therapy helped. Dr. Sarah Patel specialized in family estrangement and childhood emotional neglect. For 2 years, I sat in her office every Wednesday at 6 p.m., unpacking the architecture of my abandonment. They didn't abuse you in obvious ways, she'd said during one session. There were no bruises, no screaming matches, no dramatic confrontations. That makes it harder for people to understand why you left. They just didn't see me, I'd replied. I could have been a ghost and nothing would have changed. Emotional neglect is insidious because it's about absence. What wasn't given, what wasn't said, what wasn't done. You can't point to a single devastating moment and say this is why. It's death by 1,000 paper cuts. Except there were moments, I'd said quietly. The hospital. The 17 minutes. Dr. Patel had nodded. Sometimes you need one concrete example to hang all the abstract pain on. The hospital became that for you. She was right. The hospital visit crystallized everything that had always been true but impossible to articulate. I simply didn't matter to them. Not in the way children are supposed to matter to parents. Not in the way Bryn mattered. 3 years of peace. 3 years of building a life where I was seen, valued, remembered. Then the envelope arrived. I stared at it for 3 days before opening it, recognizing my father's handwriting on the forwarding labels. They'd sent it to my old Scottsdale apartment, then to my old workplace, then finally to my current address, which they'd somehow obtained through what I suspected was a private investigator. The photograph of my dying mother felt like a hostage note. Come back or live with the guilt of her death. I called Dr. Patel for an emergency session. What do you want to do? She asked, after I'd explained. I don't know. Part of me thinks I should go be the bigger person, offer some kind of deathbed reconciliation. Why? Because that's what good people do. Good according to whom? The question stopped me cold. Society says you're supposed to forgive dying parents, Dr. Patel continued. That deathbeds are sacred places where grudges dissolve and everyone makes peace. But society doesn't know your history. Society didn't watch you bleed out from 1,000 cuts. Society didn't wake up alone in that hospital room. But what if I regret it? I whispered. What if she dies and I spend the rest of my life wondering if I should have gone? You might. Grief is complicated, and estrangement doesn't make it simple. But ask yourself this, are you going for her, or are you going to perform the role of dutiful daughter one last time for an audience that never appreciated the performance? I thought about that for a long time. Then I made my decision. I called Rebecca Chin, my attorney, and asked her to draft a letter. Not to my mother, she was beyond letters now. To my father. The letter was delivered by courier to the hospital where my mother was receiving palliative care. Dad signed for it in the family waiting room, according to the delivery confirmation. It read, Dear Mr. Laurent, I received your photograph and your request that I come to the hospital. After careful consideration, I have decided to decline. This decision is not made from cruelty, but from self-preservation. For 28 years, I was invisible to our family unless my presence served a specific function: photographer at Bryn's events, emotional support for your marriage, convenient scapegoat when someone needed to be blamed for family dysfunction. When I nearly died 3 years ago, you spent 17 minutes at my bedside before leaving for a business meeting. Mom never came at all. That absence taught me something crucial. I do not exist to you in the ways that matter. Not as a daughter, not as a person, just as a name on a family tree that you remember occasionally when it's convenient. I have built a life where I am seen, valued, and remembered. I will not dismantle that life to play a role in a deathbed scene where I'll be blamed for not being there sooner, or for not doing enough, or for not somehow fixing 3 decades of neglect in a few final days. I wish Mom a peaceful passing. I wish you comfort in your grief. But I will not be participating in either. You taught me that I wasn't worth showing up for. I'm simply returning the lesson. This will be my only communication. Please do not contact me again. Margot Laurent. The letter was clinical, clear, and unassailable. Rebecca had made sure every word was legally sound and couldn't be misconstrued as harassment or abuse. 3 days later, my mother died. The obituary listed Bryn as her surviving daughter. My name was absent, as if I'd never existed at all. It hurt less than I expected. The days following her death brought exactly what I'd anticipated: a wave of contact attempts from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Aunt Linda, how could you not be there when your mother was dying? What kind of daughter are you? Cousin Michelle, I heard you refused to visit. That's so selfish. Family is supposed to show up. Uncle Robert, your father is devastated that you abandoned your mother. You should be ashamed. I'd prepared for this. Dr. Patel had walked me through the probability of a flying monkey brigade, people who didn't know the history, who'd only heard my parents' version, who'd be weaponized to shame me back into compliance. I had response templates ready. I appreciate your concern, but this is a private family matter that you don't have full context for. I won't be discussing it further. Most people backed off after that. The few who persisted got blocked. Bryn sent a different kind of message. 3 weeks after the funeral, I didn't attend. Dad's selling the house. Going through Mom's things. Found some stuff that might be yours. Want me to ship it or throw it away? The tone was so casually cruel that I almost laughed. Even in death, my mother's belongings were treated as an inconvenience. Ship it, I replied. Then blocked her number. The box arrived a month later. Inside, my high school yearbooks, some childhood artwork, and a single photo album labeled Margot Baby Years. I opened it carefully, surprised they'd kept it at all. The photos showed a different family. Mom holding infant me with genuine tenderness. Dad building a crib, looking proud. Little toddler me blowing out candles on a homemade birthday cake, surrounded by adults who seemed genuinely delighted. Then Bryn was born, and the photos changed. Fewer of me. More of her. Then almost none of me. As if I'd been slowly edited out of the family portrait. The final photo in the album was dated 2 months after Bryn's birth, Mom holding baby Bryn, radiant with joy. In the background, barely visible and out of focus, toddler me stood alone, looking at the camera with an expression of confusion. I'd spent 28 years trying to return to that earlier version of them, the parents who'd loved me before Bryn existed. But those people were gone, replaced by parents who'd found their favorite daughter and no longer needed a spare. I closed the album and placed it in my filing cabinet, next to the legal documents Rebecca had prepared. Evidence of what was, proof of what would never be again. 6 months after my mother's death, Dad remarried. I found out through a wedding announcement in the Scottsdale Republic. Richard Laurent and Patricia Morse were married Saturday at the Phoenician Resort in an intimate ceremony attended by close family and friends. Intimate. Close family. I wondered if they'd even noticed my absence or if, like always, I'd simply been a name they forgot to include. Bryn's Instagram showed photos from the wedding, her in a bridesmaid dress, beaming beside our father and his new wife. The caption read, "So grateful for new beginnings and blended families. Dad deserves happiness." I felt nothing. Not anger, not grief, not even the faint tug of sentimentality. Just the peaceful numbness of having successfully amputated a diseased limb. My life in Austin continued to flourish. The library renovation I'd designed won a regional award. I was promoted to partner at my firm. I bought a small house with a garden where I grew tomatoes and herbs. I dated a man named Daniel who was a history professor at UT Austin. He knew about my estrangement but never pushed me to explain more than I wanted to. On our 5th date, he mentioned his own complicated family history, a father who'd been emotionally distant, a mother who died when he was young, and I realized that shared damage could be a foundation for building something healthy, as long as both people had done the work to heal. We moved in together after a year. Got engaged after 2. Married in a small ceremony at a botanical garden, surrounded by friends who'd chosen to be our family. No blood relatives attended. I didn't send announcements. The wedding was for us, not for an audience of people who'd never valued me anyway. 4 years after my mother's death, I received another forwarded letter. This time from Dad directly, bypassed my forwarding addresses and sent to my workplace where I couldn't avoid it. The envelope was thick, formal. Inside was a handwritten letter on his architectural firm's letterhead. Margot. I'm writing because I've been diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's. The doctors say I have perhaps 3 years before I lose most of my cognitive function. Patricia has been supportive, but she didn't know you existed until after we married. She's encouraged me to reach out, to try to make amends before I lose the ability to remember why I need to. I know you didn't come when your mother was dying. I know you sent that letter. I've read it hundreds of times in the years since, trying to understand your perspective. I want to say I understand now. That I've had some revelation about what we did wrong, about why you felt invisible. But I'd be lying. I don't understand. I gave you shelter, food, education. I was present at important events when my work allowed. I thought that was enough. Your mother and I loved Bryn differently because she needed us differently. She was fragile, emotional, required constant support. You were strong, independent, capable of handling things on your own. We thought we were respecting your strength by giving you space. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a conversation. One meeting, before I forget who you are entirely. Your father, Richard Lauron. I read the letter 3 times. Then I called Dr. Patel. What do you want to do? She asked, our familiar ritual. I want to say no. To let him disappear into his disease the way I disappeared from his consciousness. But he actually acknowledged what he did. Sort of. Even if he doesn't understand it. Do you think one meeting will give you closure? I laughed bitterly. No. But maybe it will give me something else. What? The chance to say everything I never got to say. Not for his sake. For mine. I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop in Phoenix, neutral territory. I drove the 4 hours from Austin on a Saturday morning, listening to podcasts about family estrangement, reminding myself that I was doing this for me, not for him. He was already there when I arrived, looking older than I remembered. The disease hadn't ravaged him yet, but I could see the subtle signs, the way he checked his phone repeatedly, as if afraid he'd forgotten something important. The notebook on the table where he'd written notes to himself. Margot, he said, standing awkwardly. Thank you for coming. I sat across from him without offering a hug or handshake. You have an hour. He nodded, accepting the boundary. I wrote down what I wanted to say. He gestured to the notebook. In case I forget. Go ahead. He opened to a marked page, his handwriting shaky but legible. I failed you as a father. I see that now, even if I don't fully understand how or why. Your mother and I treated you like you didn't need us, and by doing that, we taught you that you weren't worth our time. The words sounded rehearsed, probably written and rewritten with Patricia's help. But they were accurate. The hospital, I said quietly. 17 minutes. I know. He looked down. I remember that. I've thought about it a lot since your letter. Do you remember why you left? I had a meeting. With a potential client who ended up going with another firm. You left your critically injured daughter for a meeting that amounted to nothing. Yes. And Mom didn't come at all because Bryn needed emotional support for a contractor delay. Yes. Say it out loud, Dad. Say what that meant. He flinched. It meant that we valued Bryn's minor inconvenience over your life-threatening crisis. It meant that I didn't matter. Not then, not ever. I was the strong one, the capable one, the one who didn't need you. Do you know what that actually means? It means you didn't want to be needed by me. Bryn's neediness was endearing. Mine was inconvenient. His hands trembled as they gripped his coffee cup. I don't know how to fix it. You can't. There's no fixing 28 years of systematic neglect. There's no deathbed reconciliation that erases the pattern. Then why are you here? Because I need you to hear something. I survived you. I built a life where I'm not invisible. I'm valued, remembered, celebrated. I have people who show up for me. I got everything I ever wanted, just not from you. He was crying now, silent tears that he didn't bother wiping away. I'm sorry. I know. But sorry doesn't mean I have to forgive you. Sorry doesn't mean I have to be in your life while you forget who I am. You're losing your memory to a disease. I lost mine to your indifference. We're even. Bryn asks about you sometimes, he said quietly. She doesn't understand why you left. Bryn has never had to understand what it's like to be second choice. She's never understood anything that doesn't center her. She's alone now. The business failed. Her marriage ended. She's back living with Patricia and me, trying to rebuild. I felt nothing at this news. No satisfaction, no sympathy. Just the blank space where familial obligation used to live. I hope she figures it out, I said neutrally. But that's not my problem. Will you come to my funeral? The question was abrupt, desperate. When the time comes? I thought about it honestly. Probably not. You'll be gone, and the performance will be for everyone else. I'm done performing. He nodded, accepting this. Can I ask one thing? What? Are you happy? The question surprised me. Yes. Very. Good. He closed his notebook, his hour almost up. That's good. We sat in silence for a few more minutes. Then I stood, gathering my purse. Goodbye, Dad. Goodbye, Margot. I walked out of the coffee shop into the Phoenix sunshine, got in my car, and drove back to Austin without looking back. 2 years later, I received the call I'd been expecting. Dad had died peacefully in his sleep, the Alzheimer's having progressed faster than predicted. The obituary listed Bryn as his surviving daughter. My name was absent, just like Mom's obituary. It still hurt less than I expected. I didn't attend the funeral. Didn't send flowers. Didn't acknowledge the death in any public way. Daniel asked if I was okay. I am, I said, surprised to find it true. I mourned this relationship years ago. This is just the paperwork filing. 6 months after Dad's death, a letter arrived from an estate attorney. Apparently, in a moment of clarity before the Alzheimer's took his ability to modify legal documents, Dad had amended his will. He'd left me his architectural drafting table. The one from his home office, the one he'd used throughout my childhood when I'd occasionally been allowed to sit beside him and watch him work. Nothing else. No money, no sentimental items, no apology letter. Just the drafting table, which arrived via freight shipping with a note from Bryn. He said you'd understand what this meant. I don't, but whatever. I set up the drafting table in my home office, next to my own modern workstation. It was beautiful, vintage, perfectly preserved. Sometimes when I worked late on a project, I'd run my hand across its smooth surface and remember the few good moments, the rare afternoons when Dad would explain a design concept, when I'd felt like maybe I mattered. Those moments hadn't been enough. But they'd been real. The drafting table became a monument to complexity. I could hate what my parents had done to me while acknowledging the few moments they'd tried, however inadequately, to see me. 5 years after I'd left that Christmas morning, I sat in my Austin backyard with Daniel, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. Our daughter, 3-year-old Elena, was digging in her sandbox, narrating an elaborate story about dinosaurs and castles. Do you ever regret it? Daniel asked quietly. Walking away from them? I watched Elena, how fully she occupied space, how loudly she laughed, how certain she was that someone would listen when she called out. No, I said. I regret that it had to happen. I regret that they couldn't love me the way I needed. But I don't regret choosing myself. She'll never know them. No. And she'll never feel the way I felt. Elena ran over, sandy hands outstretched. Mama, come see my castle. Show me, I said, letting her pull me toward her creation. She'd built something magnificent from sand and water and sticks, imperfect, temporary, but made with complete conviction that it mattered because she'd made it. It's beautiful, I told her, and meant it. The princess lives here, Elena explained. And she's brave and everyone knows her name. Everyone knows her name. I pulled her close, this child who would grow up seen and valued and remembered. Who would never wonder if she mattered because her presence would be confirmed daily in 1,000 small ways. Yes, I whispered into her hair. Everyone knows her name. Later that night, after Elena was asleep, I sat at my father's drafting table and pulled out the photo album from the box Bryn had shipped years ago. The one with photos of when I was loved, before I became inconvenient. I studied the images, baby me held with tenderness, toddler me celebrated at birthday parties, child me before I learned to be invisible. Then I placed one photo in a frame on my desk, the out-of-focus shot of toddler me standing alone in the background while everyone celebrated Bryn. Not as a reminder of pain, but as a promise, I would never let my daughter be background noise. The rest of the album, I placed in the filing cabinet next to the legal documents, the letter to Dad, the spreadsheet of disparities. Evidence of what was, proof of what would never be again. Then I turned off the light and went to bed beside my husband, in the house I'd chosen, in the life I'd built from the rubble of being forgotten. Worth isn't something you inherit from parents who can't see you. It's something you claim by building a life where you're impossible to miss.